I'm Ryan Eakin, and this is episode 2 of View from the Pits, the official podcast of the Maple Leafs. In this episode, I spoke to Jordan Castaldo about his first stint with the Maple Leafs back in the early 2010s, the passing of Jack Dominico, and his return to the Maple Leafs in 2021. This podcast is sponsored by TD Canada Trust. Jordan, thanks for coming on tonight, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Eakin.
Yeah, so I want to ask you first about Jack Dominico. He passed away obviously last month. You've known him for quite some time, going back to your first stint with the Maple Leafs. So, what do you first remember about meeting Jack back in the day?
Well, let's see. As I was saying to you before, it's probably somewhere in that 2009, 2010 range. And I really wish I could recall my first run into Jack. It was probably somewhere in that '09 summer. He's sitting outside the Maple Leafs locker room there down at the pits. It looked like he just had like a plastic school chair he was just sitting on. And I think he hollered at me, and I actually think his first question was, "Hey, are you Italian?" or something like that. And said, "Yeah, good lad," and all that stuff. But I grew up not too far. My parents lived not too far from Jack's house, so in my younger years, I would go bug him for bats, and he'd always give me a hard time. But nothing but respect for Jack. We definitely had our differences at times of our relationship, but all in all, I got nothing but nice things to say about him. And obviously, rest in peace, Jack. And I hope he's in a better place.
Yeah, when I did my podcast with you at the Bay Cats, I was asking you about, coming to the Bay Cats after you got traded from the Maple Leafs. But you said at first you were originally offered a spot by Angus back in 2010 after Oshawa left the league, but you decided to stay with Toronto. What led you to going to Toronto at that time instead of, going to another team in the league? I know obviously you're from Toronto, so that makes a big difference, but what truly went into becoming a Maple Leaf at that time back in 2010?
Yeah, it was simply logistics. At that point, I figured I was going into my senior year. If I hadn't moved the needle as far as getting a pro look or draft opportunity, would have it after my junior year. I figured I just go through my senior year and give it my all, and kind of whatever happens after that happens after that. But I guess at that point I had really no intent of making that travel. Now, that being said, I also didn't know I would play for was it 10 plus years afterwards. So at the time, it was just simply logistics. I'm not even sure I had my own car. I think my car just broke down, the one I brought home from college. So just where I was living and locality was really what made me decide. I remember the conversation with Angus, and I thanked him. But it was just simply a matter of where I was living at the time.
Yeah, and you spent 3.5 seasons with the Maple Leafs before being traded to the Bay Cats. Just what do you remember about that stint with the Maple Leafs? Because those teams, looking back at those rosters, you guys didn't, win the last game of the season, but those are pretty stacked teams. What do you remember about those teams?
You know what? We had some great teams. We had some great offensive teams too. I remember that one year, I think we had 6 or 7 guys up above 370, 365, somewhere like that. But what I remember most about that team was just a great group of guys. I mean, obviously Tops was there, and guys like Rob Gillis and Dan Gibbons and Jeremy Walker, in a different lifetime. So and then obviously we had some younger guys, myself, Brian Ivan, Tyler Fata, and those guys were some of my childhood friends. I'm pretty sure Dan Marr was on the team too back then, but so we all knew each other from our days growing up, and we kind of saw the older guys and the camaraderie they had, and it was just a great locker room to be a part of. Drew Taylor, John Lockwood, Mel Malahi. So really just a veteran team. They welcomed all the younger guys with open arms. We did a lot of things off the field together. So, we had some success. I had some personal success throughout those years. I think really what I remember about those teams is just the camaraderie and just the Kangaroo Court on Sundays. I mean, that was an absolute blast.
Yeah, and I'll ask you about coming back to the Maple Leafs last season, but when you were with the Bay Cats, was there ever a thought in the back of your mind that, near the end, you would like to go back and play one last season, maybe a couple last seasons at Christie Pitts, especially given how close you lived to this, not stadium, but the ballpark? Just, was that ever in the back of your mind in terms of going back to Toronto?
I mean, it's hard to say. I was always kind of at the mercy of my teammates with that, a little bit. We just kept winning and we kept playing, and then the whole vibe was kind of, one more year, we'll do one more. And then, I didn't think I would play after that last year in Barrie, obviously COVID changes everything. Everything's locked down. My physical exercise is at an all-time low. So, going into the summer last year, I thought to myself, it'd be great to just, be active again, really. And obviously with all the changes in Barrie, I hadn't really considered going back to this. As a matter of fact, obviously I'd asked Mills in the ownership group for the opportunity, if I was going to play, to just continue to play in Toronto. Some things in my life changed, and what, it was just one of those things where it just, the cookie kind of crumbled that way. But I had an absolute blast playing with the guys last year. It was a great group, younger group. It was nice getting some other, local Toronto guys, getting them involved in the team. Andrew Hyde in particular, and I know he said he enjoyed playing and was, surprised by the overall quality of the baseball. So I hadn't really put much thought into it, to be honest, Eakin. Like I said, it was just one of those things where the cookie crumbled that way, and we just kind of ran with it from there.
Yes, and I remember talking to you last offseason. You were like, I just don't know if I'm gonna be motivated enough to play and stuff. And sure enough, you played every single game. At this what point last season did you say, hey, I can still do this? I can still do it, not maybe necessarily at the Triple Crown numbers that you had in 2019, but you can still do it at a great elite pace, and you're happy being with the Maple Leafs again.
Yeah, I guess it was one of those things too where I didn't feel my best physically at any given point. Those first couple of weeks of the season were incredibly difficult to get the body going. I was experiencing soreness in places I never experienced. And actually, I'll never forget, I mentioned Dan Gibbons earlier. I'll never forget him saying to me, I guess he was about 30 or 31, and I was a young pup on the Leafs. And he said to me, he goes, Staldy, when you get older, your body changes, it gets harder. And, obviously young and naive, I didn't believe him, but, he was certainly right about that. Last year was definitely a grind, and I don't blame it on, the lack of exercise or anything like that, but it was a large part of it. It was, just not being able to get my body right. Because when everything shut down, I shut down too. I was dealing with, an arm issue that I created for myself at the gym, nothing like what happened in the last game, but it was something else I was kind of nursing. So, first lockdown came around, and it was just, I shut it down personally too. So, I ended up playing every game, but that's just because of my love of the game, I think, more than anything. I'm also not the type of player that could go part-time. Not because I, spend all hours of the day thinking the game. As a matter of fact, I do a great job at canceling out bad results, but it was just one of those things where, I know deep down inside that, it would just be better for myself and everyone involved if I am giving it my all and trying to be there as much as I can. And, it was easy to do this year between, with the things that we were limited to doing and all that stuff. Playing the 42 wasn't an issue. And, like I said, it really came down to just, a good group of guys, and wanting to be around them and, have all the laughs. And at the end of the day, you get to play a little baseball.
Yeah, I think when you came to Toronto, I think people thought Christy Pitts, man, you might have 15 home runs, 20 home runs, but for the first 2-3 weeks, that wasn't the case. But then Topley put you in the leadoff spot, and that was not a position you played at any point with the Bay Cats, for example. You're a staple in the 3-hole. Just what kind of difference is it playing in that leadoff spot from the 3 spot, and how much time did it take to get used to that position, or that spot in the lineup, I should say?
Well, hitting in the 3 spot, I think the best part about it was just being able to catch your breath, before you hit. And I know it's like hitting 2, I guess, was like one of those things where it was kind of in the middle for me, I kind of have my, my methodical routine before I get in there to hit. It's not complicated, but, maybe I take my time and just kind of catch my breath, really actually just kind of focus on my breathing. Cause even still to this day, I get nerves before the first at bat. And so just try to spend some time there, just trying to, slow the heartbeat a little bit. And because at the end of the day, you're going out there and, there's no worse feeling to me than losing to a pitcher than having to walk back to the dugout. So it's just a combination. Hitting in the 2 spot to start, it was like I said, it was that awkward sort of spot. I love 3. I did that for years in Barrie, did that, large part of my life playing on, many other teams. So when I struggled at the start, then, leadoff was kind of like, okay, let's just get it and go, and just try to forget about what I was tinkering with, what I was still trying to figure out, trying to make sure everything was connected. So, I like leadoff to kind of give me that extra jolt, because at the end of the day, I'm a little bit selfish when it comes to hitting, and I just knew I was getting the most at bats no matter what. And I love that idea. So maybe that took some of the thinking out of it for me, and just said, what, no matter what, I'm coming up the most. I'm gonna have the most opportunities to figure it out and contribute. And I think that was it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and then you had, I think it was against the Panthers, you had your first game in the leadoff spot, and I believe the next day you came back to face the Baycats and Midhurst for the first time. So what was that like? As a member of the Maple Leafs, you come in road, you're in the road clubhouse, you're facing the former team, and you got the fans not booing you, but it's not cheering for you the way they used to. So what was that night
Yeah.
like? Coming back to Coke Stadium.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I got a lot of credit goes to you for that video tribute, man. That was something special. Something I didn't ever imagine happening, anywhere really. So that was definitely humbling. Again, thank you. And I appreciate that. And, appreciate all the fan support up in Barrie. What I remember driving up there, and I was, I remember it was a beautiful night. I was feeling good. And, to be honest, I got my stuff out of the trunk and started walking up to the stadium, and I walked through the gate, the home side there, and started seeing some familiar faces. And surprisingly, it was a little bit emotional. It was because there was just so many good memories there. Obviously a wealth of team success, but a wealth of personal success. And, the community was really behind the team. And, I didn't really ever hear a bad thing said to me at, any point of my 6 or 7 years. So, like there's just all, this, I've said this to you 1,000 times. There's just, there was just no, there was no bad memories, nothing to dwell on when I think about those 6 years. Great time on the field, great time off the field. And we're welcomed with open arms. So it was definitely emotional, getting back there, and seeing the familiar faces, Millsy in the ownership group, some of the guys who were still playing there, Cowan, Rio, Branfy. So it was real nice. I love playing there. I told you that 1,000 times too. I absolutely love playing there. The city of Barrie or whomever takes care of that field is just, they do a top-notch job. The scene was set perfect. I mean, there's all those good vibes about going into a baseball game. But yeah, I hit a home run to start the game there, didn't I? Yeah, that was special. I don't even remember the pitch or where it was or who was pitching, but yeah, that was cool. That was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, and I know something we both wanted was a Maple Leaf Baycat playoff series, and that's what happened. Round two, Maple Leafs Baycats. You guys win game one. You had a big night. Marcus Connect had a big night. And game two comes around, first at bat of the game, and you go opposite field. Just what was that like? Playoff game's a big game. You can eliminate the Baycats. You can end the dynasty, and you lead the game off the home run. Is this how fitting was that? And so what did that moment feel like for you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's fitting necessarily. I mean, I think personally for me, just seeing the turnover in the team, in my mind, the dynasty was kind of over. And I'm not saying that from a talent perspective or anything. I'm just saying that it would have been a lot different had, if we were beating a team with Spatero in right field and, Atkinson at third base and all those things. So for me, it was just, it was just a game at that point. And we've already been up to Barrie a few times. So I think maybe that took away a little bit from the feel of the game, but it was special, certainly. I mean, it's always special winning a playoff round at any level. So to do it against Barrie, to do it, to have the game that I had, that was special. But you know what, again, it's one of those things where, I see the ball differently there. I see the ball there better than any field. So it was just, kind of like, not kind of like, but, I remember LeBron James saying when he went back to Cleveland the first time, he knew his spots on the, on the floor where to shoot from. Don't ask me what his stat line was. By no means am I comparing myself to LBJ, but, it was one of those things that you kind of know where to dig in the box. I know exactly where to play in the field and all those things. So, it was definitely special. It was special, getting the team to the next round because a lot of those guys hadn't won rings. A lot of the guys in the Leafs hadn't won rings in a long time. So, Just overall, special. But like I said, special. But whoever we would have beaten in the second round there would have been first or second round. I can't
Second
remember.
round, yeah.
Second round. It would have been special just the same way. But again, it probably would have had a little bit different feel if there were more guys back there. The Guerreros and the pitchers, Santos and Starlin, all those guys. So, and Goose in the dugout, that would have been something. But none special nonetheless.
Yeah, and then you face London in the finals, and looking back at it, that's one of the great finals in recent memory. I mean, you've played in a lot. I've written about a lot, and that's up there as one of the best ones. How tough was that series facing that London team that had probably the best pitching staff in the league, and a guy like Rambo, who's one of the best position players in the league. Just how tough was that team to face? And was it a bit surprising, I guess, how maybe great they were overall just in terms of pitching, defense, offense, and the whole nine that came with that London team.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they had a little bit of the X factor there in De Los Santos, right? He had a hell of a year. I mean, he beat us game one at the complete game. We didn't get maybe we didn't get some timely hits throughout the series. But you're right. I mean, they had good pitching. Obviously they had home field advantage too. I mean, that was huge. But it was a good battle, talent wise, I think we had more, but maybe we just lacked a little bit of execution. But to be honest, that experience of that game 5 was something I'll never forget. From the first pitch into the last, the crowd, even though we didn't win, it was pretty cool to be a part of. A lot of battles against those London guys. So I'm happy that they got to experience one. I would have been happier if it was after whenever my time is done in the IBL, but congratulations to them. Turn the page, move forward. I got 6 of them. So, if we come back and do this again this summer, the goal is just to get, a ring for everybody else who hasn't got one yet, who hasn't got a chance to experience that feeling, that dog pile. So we'll see. But that was really cool. It was a great series. And then, maybe they had a few more arms than we did. And, maybe we just missed out on some timely hits, but the boys battled and, tough environment to play in, 5,000 people. They weren't the friendliest, but the boys battled. It is what it is.
Yeah, and in that game 5, once again, you led that game off, at bat, and nothing's really happening. Is in between pitches, nothing's going on, and something happens to you. Just what happened to you, and at what point do you realize that it was a really, really bad injury, and how did you manage to play through what you ended up playing through?
Well, yeah, it was that. So I guess it was 2 pitches into the game. I step out of the box and just kind of go do my little thing there where I throw the bat up over my head and kind of rotate my shoulders through, crack my back, loosen up my neck. A move I've probably done 10,000 times in my life. So I ended up tearing my distal bicep tendon, complete tear. I felt like, everything from, my bicep to my shoulder went one way, and everything from my elbow below went, the other way. So I know if you saw the video, you can tell by my reaction, I can tell something's not right. A lifetime of AAA hockey, combo that with baseball, then you go off, play Division I baseball, and all these years after, and not one single bad injury. And then the last game of the year of potentially my last season, this thing blows up. So I ended up getting surgery November 1st, but at that point when it happened, all I could think about was, something's not right. I just drove 2.5 hours. There's 5,000 people in the stands, and there's a bunch of my boys in the dugout who haven't got a ring yet. So it was just the gamer in me, I guess, took over. I've never been one to stay down whenever I've gotten hurt. I wasn't about to do it in that environment. How I did what I did, I have no idea. I was just trying to do whatever I could, in that moment to get the boys a ring. And it wasn't enough, but there was no way I was coming to that game. That's not my mentality. Like you said, I played an all 42. I wasn't missing the most important one, right? So just willpower. And that's really it at the end of the day.
Yeah, so like I want to ask you because like it's one thing to play the game, finish it out, you want to give it 100%, all that kind of stuff. But it's another thing to go, I think it was 5 for 5. At what point in that game did you say, we try to put in the back of your mind, and if that's even possible, just like trying to will through it? Because like, again, it's one thing you can play the game, it's great, it's tough, great effort, but like you went 5 for 5 at the same time facing, some of the best pitchers in the league and Owen Boone and all that. So this, what kind of, like, looking back at it, like how great of a performance was that?
Well,
That's what I'm asking.
it's funny because I actually, I was talking to Tops a couple of weeks ago, and I actually said this to him. I actually think the one piece that I'd been forgetting to tinker with, that bicep injury almost kind of forced me to do it in order to compensate for the pain I was feeling with certain movements. So in a backhanded way, it almost kind of reconnected everything that I was maybe missing a little bit of throughout the season. But with certain movements, there was so much pain. Not pain to the extent where, I couldn't stand up straight or something, but it was pain where I just hadn't felt that type of pain before. So I was spending more time probably thinking about, certain movements and how I'm going to get to certain things, and actually stop thinking about the pain that way. But, I remember after, after that first inning, when I came off the field and asked our trainer, Pedro, there real quick, if you could take a look. And I mean, I don't even think it took him more than 10 seconds to say, "You tore your bicep." And I said right then and there, I said, I'm not coming out of the game. There was no other option for me at that point.
Yeah, and I remember you texted me after the game saying, "Man, losing sucks." That was the first time you lost a game since in a playoff series since 2013 against Brantford. You didn't win, but at the same time, if that's your last game, it's kind of nice having that as your last game. It's one of the great performances in IBL history from a pure one guy perspective. Is that kind of a decent way to go out?
Yeah, I mean, here at the end of the day, if you went on the socials afterwards, you saw the pictures of them. You didn't see the pictures of the losers or Castaldo with his torn bicep, but his wicked stat line. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm sitting here by myself thinking about it, yeah, I can maybe take a second and be like, all right, that was cool, but at the end of the day, losers aren't remembered. So, yeah, it's like, let's call a spade here, right? Like it's pretty cool when you think about it. Probably something, again, I never thought I would have been able to do, but not winning trumps that feeling far more than remembering the stat line. Cool story to tell, but would have been cooler if it was torn bicep 5 for 5 and a ring for the Maple Leafs, and it would have been perfectly right before Jack passed, and you get a ring for everybody else, and off to the sunset you go. So yeah, it's cool, but at the end of the day, I would have preferred a W. I would have preferred 0 for 4 and a W.
No, for sure. And I mean, there's always 2022 for redemption. Whether or not you come back, I always appreciate the time you've taken for me over the years. It was great to have you convince me to join the Leafs back in August. It was a decision that was, paid off, I think, for everyone. So I appreciate the time you've taken for this one and throughout the years, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Eakin, always a pleasure. Keep doing your thing. And I hope the other guys enjoy this as much as I have.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Once again, that was episode 2 of View from the Pits. Stay tuned to the Leafs social media platforms this Thursday at noon for a big announcement. Until then, thanks for listening.